Today's episode was originally broadcast in March 2026 as part of our Social Talent Live webinar, the AI Transformation Playbook for Talent Acquisition. If you missed this free event, be sure to sign up for the next one over on socialtalent.com/live. In this conversation, Kerstin Wagner shares how Deutsche Bahn moved from recruiter-led experimentation into a more structured AI roadmap without killing innovation. This conversation covers prompt libraries, internal AI champions, governance, automation wins, and why the best AI ideas still start in operations. An unmissable episode for TA leaders balancing compliance, scale, and creativity. Let's dive in.
I'd love to welcome Kerstin Wagner. Kerstin is the Executive Vice President of Talent Acquisition at Deutsche Bahn. Kerstin, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. I've known Kerstin for a very long time, admired her and her team and the way they've always been innovative. And in this area, no surprise, Kerstin, you've certainly shown innovation over the last few years. It's brilliant to have you here. I'll ask you to turn your mic on if that's okay. You've got it. Kerstin, you might introduce yourself. Tell us where you're joining us from. Maybe for those who aren't in Europe, in mainland Europe, tell us a little bit about Deutsche Bahn and how you kind of hire everyone in Germany.
No, it's really great to be here. Thanks for the invitation, and hello to everybody who is listening us. Yep. And I'm joining from Berlin. I'm sitting in the middle of the governmental area. So Chancellor is sitting across our building, close. We are really, really close to our main product, the train station. We are Deutsche Bahn. Deutsche Bahn, it's a mobility company. So we are moving people and goods from A to B. And if you've ever been to Germany, maybe or hopefully you're already sat in one of our trains, maybe also in our high-speed train, the ICE. And that's basically what we're doing. We're doing infrastructure building, like the tracks and the train station and everything, but we also kind of do the operations of the trains, but also we also have buses, but we also have the cargo trains, like moving goods from one country to the other country. We are around about 220,000 people all over. And when it comes to talent acquisition, so our hiring volume, kind of like the last years, were like around about 30,000. Now we are around about 20,000 people. And it's kind of a mix of basically everything. It's not whole Germany we are hiring, but it's basically from the target groups. It's kind of like a whole city. So really school leavers and blue collar worker, white collar managers. And I'm only joking around as I look. We're basically hiring everybody except for maybe doctors or nurses. We are not really needing, but the rest we do. So it's mainly really tech focus, and therefore it's kind of a interesting area, and but also a very challenging one in a very tight market. If you maybe know, like in whole Europe and especially in Germany.
I love this, and I really wanted to start with you, Kerstin, because on a lot of people's mind, including we've got questions already from the likes of Sonia coming in, folks are struggling to get approval around AI tools, and we'll get to this later, and we'll talk about governance and approval in a few minutes. But I wanted to really highlight the fact that you're sitting in Germany, considered typically one of the most risk-averse countries in Europe, if not the world. You're working for a public body, so there's probably, it's not a Silicon Valley tech startup who can do whatever the heck they want. So there's probably more scrutiny there. And it's a proper scaled enterprise, as you said, doing like 30,000 hires a year across multiple different disciplines and roles. So I think it's about as complicated as it gets in a potentially conservative environment. And yet we're showcasing how you've brought AI forward. And that's what I wanted to try and start with. But before we go there, maybe we can roll right back to the beginning. Kerstin, sure. When did the AI journey begin for the TA team? And maybe you might just share a little bit about the number of folks there, how it's structured, and what did the early days look like? And then we'll begin to take you on that journey. That's okay.
Yeah, more than happy to share with everybody. Actually, our AI journey started a couple of years ago, and it's not exclusively the AI journey, it was more the innovation journey. Because to have that mindset to kind of reinvent yourself all the time, even in a kind of in an environment where you really have to kind of look into data protection, and we also have kind of other kind of regulations around us, you still can be very innovative. And to kind of implement this innovation mindset was kind of the breakthrough like a couple of years ago. But the AI roadmap started with actually some people in my team, recruiters, who kind of were already experimenting at home, like, you know, with GPT, with Gemini, with whatever it was existing at that time. And they came to me and said, look, why are we not using that? You know, I have a wonderful use case, and sure, I can't put the data from work into my private kind of environment of AI, but you know, we could be better if we do whatever. We started with prompting, with poor normal prompting a couple of years ago, and so the first person came to me and said, look, I would like to use that better in my work environment. And I would love to share this with other people passionate about experimenting this. And that was basically the starting point. And actually, I think the first product we got was like then a prompt library, very easy. It was not fancy stuff. So the first prompts were shared on our shared drive, like everybody could have access to it, very easy. And then all of a sudden you got this motion, this kind of, you know, there's a second person and a third person and a fourth person and another recruiter, and they pull together and put their minds together and say, look, oh, I tried it, but you know, I can improve that better. And so it was not a battle. It was more a kind of, you know, pull the brilliant minds together, and we start from there. And so we made it more public within the team to say, look, there is a group of people, they kind of want to share stuff. And when I was talking to the team, and I'm kind of, you know, traveling around in my 19 kind of locations I have in Germany, I normally talk about that topic. And I also talked about the topic right in the beginning, that, you know, that is also a piece of innovation. So try it out. Come back to me, you know, with an idea. You don't have to be a master in AI. You have to be, you know, kind of innovative or creative, and you know, what problem would you like to use in order to get it solved by AI? And I think if you ask a recruiter or a marketeer, I think they can tell you, you know, what is the nightmare of, you know, an operational recruiting like every day? What is the problem you want to get solved, because it, you know, it bothers you since years. So therefore we started with that. So they brought it up. I kind of engaged them, and look, you have the freedom to speak up. You have the freedom to kind of, you know, come up with ideas. And then we also started a little bit of a challenge, because we have like a kind of an own capsuled GPT in our company, as I think many other companies have. But it's kind of limited. You have like a free license up to 100 prompts. And then I took the challenge. Look, I kind of give you like a license over the 100 prompts, but you have to use it, you know, until the limit of 100 prompts. And so therefore we kind of initiated also like, you know, use it, try it out. If you come to the border of 100 prompts, then you get the better license. So really kind of, you know, make a little bit more a positive mindset on that thing. So it was not very structured. It was more kind of give the freedom, you know, the room for experimentation, to kind of showcasing that it's working, and you don't have to have a study, you know, of like 4 years in order to be the master of AI. And the story I'm always telling people is like, look, we all started at 0.0 like 3 years ago or something, you know, there is no master around who have like experience of 100 years or 10 years of recruiting. No, we all started at the same point, and now it's a time to kind of, go on that road in order to kind of, start the movement. And that was kind of how we get it kicked off.
I love that. You mentioned at the start this culture of innovation that you've always had. And actually, it wasn't an AI project, it was an innovation project. And if I can tease out just for a second, Kerstin, something that I found very interesting, and I see this pattern in teams that are progressing like you and are maybe further down that journey, is that you didn't, as you say, start with all the rules, all the compliance, all the risk. That can stifle innovation, that can really hold you back. It comes, and we'll get to that, but to start with, as you said, you wanted to create an environment where people felt safe to experiment, felt safe to come up with different ideas. Would you say that that's critical? And has that always been the way you've approached innovation?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are not doing something, against any regulation or against any data protection law. So we really respect like the kind of the frame we're working in, but even within that frame, you have a lot of space. You have a lot of kind of, green fields where you really can do the experiments. And therefore, and that's always my approach, give the secure environment and really initiate like, the creativity and kind of this, what is the use case? And even if it's a really crazy use case, maybe we find a solution. So start to enter the solution room right away and not saying or telling people, oh, wow, that's a problem. I know, but we can't solve it because of 5 reasons. My question is always, what should we do in order to overcome the hurdles? What should be done to get it done? And sometimes it helps to open kind of our minds in order to then find the solution. And also especially in the times right now with all the AI and automation and everything. So we kind of reinvent ourselves as TA, and therefore it's very important to do that.
I'll come next in a second to how you evolve that. But during that initial testing phase, Mark is wondering, what were like the most common prompts that the TA team was using AI for? When it was a case of them just coming with opportunistic ideas, can you remember some of those opportunities?
Oh, that was very easy and kind of, write me a super interesting kind of a job ad or kind of a kind of briefing thing or kind of, prepare me for this interview tomorrow, and or I have to do a moderation of a workshop, what kind of thing. So that's very easy, really easy to use stuff, and that was really, it's a kind of really answering and helping in an operational life of a recruiter, and that so really kind of it came very natural, like really coming from the operations. And that's always my thing. You can't put, but I think we can touch that. You always have to bring the operations and the AI expertise together. Mm-hmm. So it really has to come from the operations and not somebody sitting next to the operations saying, look, I have a brilliant idea, you have to do that. In my opinion, really doesn't work.
So when you moved beyond this phase of recruiters kind of coming with ideas, it evolved over time, not maybe in that first year, to being a lot more structured and embedding into more of a vision of what we could become as a recruiting team. Talk to me about how that structure came about, how it became less about reactive, opportunistic prompts and more into structured strategy.
Actually, we entered then after we got these use cases and there were more and more coming. Then we entered in kind of a phase 1, and this phase 1 was the creation of a so-called AI hub. It's kind of a virtual platform, a virtual meeting room, or kind of a network. Let's call it network of people who bring the requirements, the use cases to the table, and they don't have to be experts on it, but they know what they want to get done, and then bring the AI experts. So I have a couple of AI experts or kind of tech experts, and bring them together on a kind of in that network. And then they kind of look at the use cases, the ideas, they prioritize, they kind of work together on the solutions for these use cases, and then bring it back to the people. And therefore, that helped us quite a bit in order to structure the whole thing a little bit, and not like, oh, we have a lot of crazy ideas and somehow it will kind of work, but make it more structured, bring more expertise to the table, make solutions faster, and also kind of talk about what we can achieve together. And that attracts more people to kind of tell, I don't have any clue how AI can help me, but it sounds interesting. Maybe, I want to get in touch with this AI hub and then learn. And the learning thing was also like learn from each other, and kind of maybe that's my initiative in order to kind of, do the first prompt myself. And therefore it's kind of it's kind of a pacemaker, the AI hub, on that helped that to really become more structured. Now with phase 2, I would say we're in the mid of that. Now we are kind of, because the whole world of TA is changing also because of AI automation and all the technology, we are currently working on a kind of, what's the vision? What's the vision of the TA world of tomorrow? And then, go through kind of the whole process of marketing, recruiting, because also employer branding sits in our team, and recruiting, and to really go through that and say, look, at which stage we could use AI to become better, or automation or any other technology, to really make it a very structured approach, but having the vision in mind where we want to go. And there are always 2 facts or kind of 2 proof points when we really want to do AI and the use of AI, is either we become more efficient with that use case, or we become more candidate centric. In the best manner, like both of the criteria were met or are met, and therefore that is how we kind of go through the process with a vision, and then do the prioritization, because you can't do everything at once. So we do it step by step with a roadmap and prioritization. So we actually just met with our leadership team today in order to go through that. So it was really interesting discussion. It's really also in the leadership team, really an open discussion, and say, look, how do we do it differently? What would help, in order to do the next step?
Kerstin, if you don't mind me unpacking some of this, when you say you have internal experts, if I'm correct in my memory, Kerstin, you didn't hire AI experts into your team. These are some of the original folks who were super interested in AI, who used to carry recs, used to fill jobs. You have, over the last couple of years, evolved new jobs where people maybe they stop filling some of the recs as much, and now they have more full-time or part-time responsibility for AI governance or AI ideas or AI adoption or implementation. This has changed even the org structure to some degree of your team and created new opportunities for those team members. They're internal experts that have evolved from the team. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. There is one or 2 people coming more from they have IT backgrounds. But the important thing is really to have the operations and the experts really together, not separate, in totally separate teams. Our kind of approach, successful approach so far, was really to have that interlinked, with one mindset, with one clear target. We wanna become better on that. And but there are a lot of people now sitting more in our governance, having the recruiting background, and that's a fantastic thing, because both worlds belong together, and therefore that's the grip. So don't just hire, in my opinion, hire AI experts and not linking it to real business, because the requirements come from the business and not from the experts. So it always gets started in the operations, and not because I have a brilliant idea kind of thing.
I have a load more questions to get through from our audience, actually, and
Oh my goodness.
several around governance. So this is one of our first governance questions from Sonia, and it's, how are you actually obtaining internal approval for AI tools? She's sharing she's finding it difficult, can't even get LinkedIn's hiring assistant approved in the EU due to compliance constraints. So she'd love to understand. I know every company's different for sure, but how did you go about bringing the business into that process and collaborating to get approval for these tools? Because we all know that there's often a pushback from the organization on using these different things.
Actually, we kind of talked to our kind of the required people in the company quite early. So really kind of involved them quite early. That's one learning, and not like, oh wow, I bought a tool and now I have to kind of to ask people for permission. That's not really the way how we kind of do the approach, and that's not really working. So therefore, talk to, when it comes to data protection, talk to the responsible data protection right from the beginning, talk to the Workers' Council right from the beginning, and especially talk to my colleague. He is kind of overseeing the HR IT in total. Also kind of, how we can collaborate together. Maybe, there's already, like in the business, there is already AI or any technology already kind of approved, then I just kind of, not stealing the right, but I just use that technology. Why should I kind of, go to the market and go through the whole process? Like, look in your company where already like AI tools or any experts are sitting, and kind of collaborate with them. So that's our approach, and focus on that what's feasible. Sure, I also have millions of ideas and tools I could use, but they are not allowed because of many regulations. So therefore, stay in your play field and kind of focus on that. And even if you focus on that, with that what's possible, you can achieve quite a bit. And that's something focus on the battle you can win.
We've one from Scott, which I think is related to this, which is around specific tools. So Scott's asking around the governance for candidate ranking and assessment tools, because a lot of folks are talking about this. Whether it's Copilot, ChatGPT, or something in your ATS, whether it's Workday, SuccessFactors, etc. A lot of litigation around that, a lot of talk around that area. So is that an area you've dealt with? I know there's so many different use cases, but that specific thing around ranking or sorting or giving an opinion on the quality of a candidate, has that come up, or has it been something that you've deliberately avoided?
Actually, with our matching, we could do a ranking, definitely. But what's also important, and and that was clear from the beginning, we still have human in the loop. That's clear. That's also a clear commitment that we are not doing any hiring process without any human interaction. And therefore, sure, we can kind of, we get assisted by whatever the tool is giving us, matching, but that's just assisted. And then we're still doing an interview, for example, afterwards. And that's something. So we are, and it's not our approach of doing it like, give it all the machine and kind of everything is getting done. And if we would do that, then I think we also would have a lot of discussion with our Workers' Council or any people involved in that.
I would imagine. I'm going to close with some common questions, and they're around practical examples, right? I'll give you two questions, but they're basically the same. Laura is asking, what automation workflows have you found to be the most time saving or beneficial? Mm-hmm. And then Sylvia, again, very similar theme, is wondering, what are the examples you can share around use cases that have worked out? As a projects, agents, connectors, just some practical examples. So what's your best, or what are some of the ones that have emerged as being the most useful, that have driven maybe that candidate kind of satisfaction improvement, or driven that productivity or capacity piece?
Actually, and I think you mentioned it's not only exclusively AI, it's also automation. if you talk about AI, normally we think of these huge use cases, and we forget about our RPA. And RPA and automation really helped us quite a bit in order to become way more efficient. And really, and it's something, and I take that example because it's not this super fancy award-winning whatever idea, because it's if you really have a hiring volume like we do, we need a lot of medical kind of examination for our safety, like for safety and security. A lot of our train drivers and all these people working around a train, they have to go through kind of a medical, physical, and psychological exam. So we work with a lot of, not with some of, some kind of medical centers out there. And if you have thousands of these medical exams, you really have to kind of, pull all these different data and timetables from all these providers. That was a nightmare for everybody. So we with RPA, we could do now we kind of pulled all these lists, different type of lists together with all these kind of time slots, and pulled it in the system, and it's get automated. And that's kind of, if you do that 1,000 times normally manually, it was like a game changer to kind of do that. And I'm always telling that this not really fancy example, because that's the typical, in my opinion, a typical thing where you can save a lot of effort and time in order to focus it really on the candidate, because that's not an added value to anybody. So that's one of our favorite thing. And AI, it's probably the chatbot where we have AI included, and that helped us quite a bit in order to be very candidate centric, very candidate oriented, and kind of you can apply with the chatbot, you get answers, and there we kind of did a lot of experimentation, and we have a lot of stuff on the roadmap what you also can do with that, and with our metaverse we have, and how we can build in AI and that.
I could keep going and get more examples from you, but we're way over. Audience would love to know more. I know some of your team are on the chat as well, so maybe if they would like to volunteer their favorite tool that they've seen in the recruiting team at Deutsche Bahn that's been helpful. I think sometimes folks just need inspiration as to the kind of ideas that might trigger an idea for them, and as you say, a simple but super effective, what might seem a mundane workflow fix that just opens up a huge amount of time or opens up an experience for a candidate that really improves things. Kerstin, I can't thank you enough for taking some time from your very busy day to join us here today and share some of those examples of the innovative roadmap. As John Vasilika, who's listening in to us, pointed out, he introduced you back in 2019 when I think you were showcasing VR or AR, augmented reality use cases.
That's a long time ago.
Helmets, but a history of innovation is the pattern, Kerstin.
That's good.
And it's wonderful to see how it's continuing. So thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing that.
Thank you so much.